Let's go ahead and call the Sherwood School Board to order for October 14th, 2020. Please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have several items on the consent agenda tonight. Has everyone taken a look at the materials, and is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, move that we adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Reports. Superintendent Dr. Forty.
Good evening. Thank you. My report this evening is all about the job shadows that I've been doing with staff. So you might remember a few weeks ago in a message to staff, I shared with them my desire to learn what the CDL environment is looking like and feeling like for them in their roles. And that if I could have the opportunity to job shadow, I would love to do that. And I really wanted to focus in on staff members who are working with students through the CDL model remotely, either from their classrooms or from their homes. And I was hoping for a teacher and a classified from elementary and a teacher and a classified from secondary, 6 through 12. And in a moment like that, you kind of cross your fingers and you hope that somebody takes you up on the invitation. And I was really thankful, I am really thankful for all of the staff members who have invited me to be a part of that. And so over the course of the last few weeks, I've done a few, another one today, and then I have some scheduled for tomorrow and Friday as well, and in the out weeks. But so far, I've had the opportunity to shadow a SPED IA at Middleton who works in our LIFT program. And that job shadow was spending time with him via Zoom as he was preparing for a lesson and the lesson was going to be later on in the day with a nonverbal third grader. And then later on in the day, I had the opportunity to be a part of that lesson. The next shadow after that was with a kindergarten teacher who one day invited me. She is teaching from her classroom at one of our elementaries and invited me to be a part on one day for her preparation, and then the next day to observe a lesson. And so when I showed up at her classroom, there was another kindergarten teacher that she was collaborating with, and they also had a cloud kinder teacher who had some of their kindergartners as well, collaborating with them. And so I spent about an hour and a half with them as they were preparing, and it became really clear really early on that they were preparing for the first week of November already. So here we were at some early place in October, but because of how proactive they all are in putting together the supplies and the materials that are necessary for our upcoming lessons and getting those out in advance, they were already preparing for the first week of November while the IAs were out in the common area collating for the upcoming 2 weeks. It was amazing and quite a process. And then today I was in via Zoom another elementary in a second grade classroom, and I got to spend time during that reading lesson, was in several breakout rooms with students and the teacher and students paired up, engaged in activities. So just the takeaway from all of those so far is how hard our staff, how hard they're working, and the tremendous steep learning curve, the determination and professionalism, the dedication, and just the grit and resilience that was just present in every one of those lessons, and knowing how hard it was for them in all that they were doing. So I'm really thankful for those opportunities, and I look forward to the ones that are going to happen in the future at different other grade levels, and with some additional classified staff. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. ASB student report, Ainsley.
So next week is homecoming, so that's super exciting. We're doing a little TV show where a lot of students and staff are going to be featured doing different events like a Jeopardy, Family Feud, and a pumpkin carving. So that'll be really fun. We have, one second, I wrote it down. It's really cool because not only classes that didn't have Photoshop, like AP Photo, we got laptops because the Chromebooks can't handle the software. And then I know that one of Ms. Dannon's classes also got laptops so that they could do their thing. And I think computer design got it. So that's really cool. And then fall sports, the mini season starts next week. That's really exciting. Spring sports, there have been a lot of people getting PRs, which is really, really cool. I don't know if you guys know Jeffrey Rogers. He almost broke the school record for the 1500 by 0.2 seconds. And so he was really sad about that, but he's gonna get it next time. So it's all good. Yeah, so we're looking forward to the new events, but that's all I have for today.
Great, thank you. SCA, Nancy.
Do this in that funnel. So good evening, Chair Allen, directors, Dr. Corby. It's great to see you in person, actually. It's been a long time. So tonight I'm here to talk a bit about what I and other SCA leaders are hearing from our certified colleagues since we started back with students. As I know that you all know, saying that this is hard is truly an understatement. It has been so very difficult for everyone, for our students, for their parents, for our administrators, the classified staff, and certainly our classroom teachers. There is a very palpable level of stress and exhaustion that I've not really seen before. Our building reps are saying that our teachers are continuing to work just hours that are not sustainable, many of them 10 to 12 hours a day, just ongoing. And despite those long hours, many are feeling like it's just not enough. They just feel like they wish they could do more for their students without suffering, their own health or risking the health of loved ones by either keeping up this pace or bringing students back to in-person while this virus is still prevalent. It's just another torn. Many of our teachers are saying that it feels right now like it's April or May, and it's only October. One of my colleagues yesterday in a conversation said, man, it feels like we are running a sprint and we should be running a marathon because we know that we're going to be in this for a while. And so somehow we need to work together to figure out how to reduce the workload because what's happening is just not sustainable. Along with reports of long hours and technology frustrations and screen fatigue for our students and for the educators, this looming concern is around hybrid and what that might look like when we're actually able to bring our students back. A growing number of teachers are really quite worried about how they would be able to engage with students online and a cohort in person, trying to juggle the two platforms. They just are feeling like, I don't know how it's possible. It's really difficult now, and everybody's doing the same thing. And so I know that our teacher leaders have been talking to administrators about this and working through, trying to work through it. But on Monday evening, this was expressed just over and over by all 6 buildings. Our 4th through 12th grade teachers are justifiably anxious and worried about it. I was pleased to see that this topic was actually on the agenda for tonight, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about it and continuing to partner with the district to come up with a solution that's going to ensure that it's workable for everyone. We are really appreciative of the labor management meetings that we've had scheduled every couple of weeks this year. Typically, they are once a quarter, but this year, rather than doing that, we're meeting regularly, and it's just been so wonderful to be able to address concerns quickly and collaboratively, and just really engage in honest and frank conversations on a really regular basis. It's been helpful. So our teachers, as you know, are so anxious, more than anyone in this room, to get the kids back in person, but are also very worried about the need to be cautious in bringing them back too soon, because we have to be confident that everyone will be kept safe. We're watching other districts across the state who are using exceptions and limited in person and bringing them back, and then seeing cases reported in schools, just as all of you are. And we have growing concern that the parent group who are pushing to eliminate the metrics and bring kids back, regardless of what science and the medical professions are telling us, will actually start taking hold here in Sherwood. And so we are just urging you to not let that pressure change your commitment to keeping our students and our staff and the whole community safe. I want you to know that there's a lot of really great things that are happening and bright spots that are happening in the district. One of our secondary teachers was telling me this story the other day. He and his family were going over, I think, to Central Oregon, and as he was driving across the mountains, his younger son, who attends school in Sherwood Elementary, started talking about mountain lions and the habitat and coloring and all of this stuff. He looked at me and said, what are you even reading? Where did you learn that? He's like, well, Dad, that was part of our science lesson in class last week. That's what I was doing. And so, it's like, despite all of this and how hard we think we are and we feel like we're feeling, our kids are learning. Another one of my colleagues said that a few of his kids have actually said they are loving this online learning, and they hope that they don't have to come back because they prefer to mostly work alone, and they can work at their own pace, and these kids are thriving. It's meeting their needs, and so we have to remember that. It's so easy, I think, to get mired in what's not working and forget that our kids are learning, and there are really great things that are happening, and so we are seeing successes, and I think that's important. Many of our SEA members were really happy with the Board of Education's new All Students Belong law and requiring that schools are a safe place for every single individual that walks in. That's what needs to happen. It's about time. And we were equally pleased to see your anti-racism resolution on last month's agenda, and hopefully your adoption of it tonight. I can't say that I speak for every single teacher in Sherwood or across the state, but a very large number of us are very, very concerned about the ongoing presence of racism right here in our community and in our state, and it has to stop. Along those lines, institutional racism has just existed far too long, and we have to actively do what we can to dismantle it so that every single one of our students can reach their full potential. So we are so happy to see that that is your priority. And finally, I just want to thank all of you for always allowing us to share our thoughts and our concerns. And it's just, we just so appreciate the ability to let you know how we're thinking and feeling so that we can do better. Because our teachers are working super, super hard and they go above and beyond, as you know, every single day for the sake of students. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And Christina, I think you have a written report from Patina.
Yes, Tina Franken from OSBA could not be here tonight, so she emailed me and asked me to share this information. She just wanted to share with the board that our own Carol Duncan was one of only 3 winners for the Literacy Leader Award from the Portland Reading Council. This is a distinguished award and was nominated by middle school teacher Cassie Brooks. And Carol is actually being presented her award tonight via Zoom this evening. And Tina just wanted to share, we're so lucky to have her in her position. She's very passionate about her position and she is humbled by this award.
Great, thank you. Public comment, did anyone sign up or submit any public comment?
We do not have any submitted public comment.
Great, thank you. Information and discussion. First up is secondary hybrid model conversation. This is Gary and Melissa and Mary.
We did program that.
You gotta figure out where the camera's looking away from,
Just so long as it's 6 feet apart.
so long as they're 6 feet apart. Thank you, reminder, Chair Allen. Good evening, Chair Allen, Board of Directors, Superintendent Cordy. I'm gonna take my mask off while I'm talking, if that's okay. So, Nancy, first of all, thank you for your words tonight. I really appreciate you bringing that here on behalf of the teachers, and it's really a poignant piece that you brought up, and I think we can hear what we want to talk about tonight. I think we're thinking about this in similar ways, so I'm really glad that you brought that to the board's attention, to our attention, and I think that will really be the start of some good conversations going forward. And also just building on the comments that were made about the great job that our teachers are doing. We sent home, as you know, a survey to families just asking how this comprehensive distance learning was going, and we'll be circling back with them in some communication this week about what those results look like. But there were a lot of positives in there, and a lot more people saying that distance learning was going well for them than not going well, which is quite a shocking thing considering a huge percentage of people would much rather be in school in person, not in a pandemic. And so I think that says a ton of the work of our teachers, and they're really getting after it, and we're seeing that in a lot of ways. So that's not the topic for tonight. No, tonight we want to talk about what it looks like to bring kids back into schools at the secondary level. And some of the challenges we're hearing about in some districts that are opening schools, opening in hybrid models, in other parts of the country are experiencing some of the same challenges that our teachers are bringing up right now, and trying to manage kids in the same classroom who are both in school, some at home school, sometimes kids in the cloud campus. We've got sort of 3 different groups we're mixing together trying to manage. And so we know we're a ways out from bringing kids back, and that gives us a long runway. We want to try to get ahead of it and make this model work for kids, make it work for teachers. And so that's why we're here tonight. We don't have the answers, but we do want to talk to you about where we are and what we've learned and what we're thinking about. So just what we'll go over tonight. There we go, perfect. So these are some things we'll cover tonight. I'm here with Ms. Thunderheide and Ms. Barron, and they're going to talk about sort of the high school, middle school piece. I'll give an overview and then turn it over to them, and we'll bring you up to speed on what we're thinking. So the first thing I wanted to just go over briefly, the metrics. As I stated before, we've been over these a couple times. These are our metrics for K-3. Here are the metrics for 412, which is largely what we're talking about tonight. Just to put this in perspective, just to let you know where we've been in our positivity rates in Washington County. The week of the 13th of September, we were at 29.8. The week of the 20th, we were at 37.3. The week of the 27th, 42.4. And the week of October 4th, 46.6. So kind of a continual move in a direction that moves us away from bringing kids back. Our positivity rates have been in the mid-5s throughout that time. So just to give you a little update on where that stands, is my main point in bringing that to you. So we're probably a ways away from this, but we did want to start the conversation. One of the choices you have to make, when we built our comprehensive distance learning models, we had in our mind the whole time, what does this look like when we bring kids back on campus? And you might recall that we started building a hybrid model. Then in late July, we found out that the case rate started to rise. We learned we were going to be opening in comprehensive distance learning. We switched gears, developed a comprehensive distance learning model, sort of keeping the hybrid model in our thinking as we were working to build out, or really the teams were working to build that. I didn't build it. I should say they built. And you have to make some hard choices. And one of those really hard choices you have to make is, if it's really a binary decision. You can either offer a comprehensive set of courses, meaning kids can take all the courses they need, and this is especially complex at the high school level, and then you're limited when you bring kids back to say the cohort's of 100, or you can stay with strict cohorting, but that means kids have far fewer options. And so the choice we made was to give kids a comprehensive offering. That's what the strength of our high school, and we didn't want to remove that from kids. Any questions at this point before I turn it over to Ms. Funderheide? Okay. I'll put on my mask, get 6 feet away, and let her come on up the podium. Thank you, Ms. Funderheide.
Thank you. So good evening, Board Chair, Superintendent Cory, Board of Directors. Thank you for the opportunity to come and talk a little bit about our updates. And like Barry said, we don't necessarily have a lot of answers, but we have some. I'm going to pull my mask down too. Okay. So I'm like find myself driving with it up now. So anyway,
Safety in the car.
exactly. So the first thing that we, Ms. Barry and I want to talk about is really just revisiting and putting some context into some of the work that happened over the summer, and then we will move on to some of the current conversations and work that's happening. And our process was driven really by the fall planning design team that we had at the middle level, and some key components that we were looking at were the desire to create a fluid schedule that allowed movement between models. Also maximizing live instruction, as well as making sure that we were meeting the OD guidance and that we were given. We also really wanted to implement a model that aligned as closely with our brick and mortar as we could, and that would also allow us to run a similar schedule in CDL for smooth and seamless transitions. So really trying to hit all three. So where we landed was the model that we came up with was to have students take 6 classes per day, and teachers teaching 4 classes, and students attending 1 week on and 1 week off to keep the cohort stable and small within the teaming. And we really wanted to follow our teaming model. We've been really committed to that from way back when TVAC conversation started. And so keeping that teaming model that we were already implementing, and we believe that's what's best for students, to build those relationships with their peers and with their teachers, and having that smaller core group of teachers. And lastly, having students who are in the cloud campus be combined with the students in the hybrid model. So they're sprinkled throughout, which would be less disruptive during different transition times. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Ms. Barron, and I'll be back.
Can I ask one quick question? So if you look at the total number of students that a teacher would typically see if we were last year, if all the kids were in the building, compared to this model, are the teachers seeing more, less kids?
They're seeing overall, they're seeing on average the same amount of students throughout the day. And I'm going to talk a little bit about class size later. They're seeing more students within the class period, but overall throughout the day, they're seeing about the same number of students. And that was in order to keep the cohorts, but also give the teachers time for their CLTs and their planning. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you. So here we are. Here to share kind of where we've been. And I'm just glancing at the screen thinking about when I was here 6 weeks ago talking about the high school and the schedule that we had planned, and we really prioritized consistency and connection and belonging and building this opportunity for our students. And we were going to divide everybody into these houses and have 3 separate groups of students and kind of 3 schools within schools happening at the same time in order for us to maintain our elective offerings. And when I say elective offerings, it's not just things like woodshop and choir, but really levels of courses. So in our language arts classes and in our social studies classes, we have so many options and selectives for students. And that was the only way that we could figure out how to keep the cohorts small enough. So to get to the 100 students was to divide it up into the houses, and then as well as offer this same opportunity for our cloud campus students. We really believe still that just because a student or family needs to stay away from school, regardless of the metrics, that they deserve to have the same access to courses. And so that's what we put into place in the fall. And what happened was it didn't work. And that's the straight answer, is that it just didn't work mathematically. We couldn't get students into the courses. There was too many variables that we were trying to mitigate. And so we ended up with a lot of classes that had 6 students in them because they needed this pre-calculus and AP US history and AP biology and band. And there was no way for us to put those 4 classes into the houses in the right way. And so we had to quickly change gears, and that's why we ended up where we're at now, and why we've been really trying to have this thoughtful conversation as we're working the plan for the remainder of the year, because what we originally thought was going to work, it just didn't. And that feels like something that is our reality right now, that we think that we have this really awesome idea, this really great plan in place, and then it doesn't work. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about where we're at now, but that's just a reminder of where we were the last time we was here. Yes.
I just want to say, I think that whole experience of you guys having to go through planning and then tearing it all down the Tuesday before you put it all back up on Friday. As I was reading that email and as you were sharing that information with the students, I was having this vision in my head of just like the controlled chaos of that moment when you made the decision to tear it all down and start over. And I just want to commend you and your team, and Marianne, you and your team, I know I had to do the same thing, and but making it all work for the kids. And I was talking to my high school student who was like, I don't know what all this means. And I'm like, it means that like they had a really great plan. They had to redo it. It felt seamless to them. It was just like, oh, okay, well, I wait another day for my schedule. But I think we know that means that you and teachers and everyone had to redo everything on a dime. And that's, it's not lost on us how incredibly difficult that is, and just kudos for making it work. It's hard and challenging as that is.
Oh, I do have the next slide, I'm sorry. So, let me have the clicker, sorry about that, guys. This was one of those things where we were like, who should talk about this one? So, Gary mentioned this briefly in his portion of the presentation, and one of the things that we're really trying to learn about and make sure that we understand fully, and Nancy kind of talked about it a little bit as well, is this idea of our teachers, when we move into a hybrid model, needing to manage essentially 3 different groups of students at the same time, and what that actually means and how that actually works. And so that is one of our biggest instructional challenges that we're trying to solve right now, is how, as a classroom teacher, will I have students in front of me, have some students potentially working virtually, and then also have students that won't ever be on campus. And so they have 3 different experiences. And so that is just something that, as we're talking about this next phase of where our thinking is, know that that's really at the center of our challenge around instruction specifically. So this is not a technical, this is really about how are we going to support our teachers in managing these 3 very different groups of students. And one of the things that we've learned so quickly in the last 6 weeks is just how challenging this instruction is. We I have been at this my 19th year in education, and I have never seen a group of people working harder to try to learn how to do something than I have this year. Because it's unlike anything we've ever experienced. And in my naive brain, I thought, well, we're just going to take some instruction, we'll learn some good things about Zoom, and we'll figure out how to do breakout rooms, and it will be okay. It's not going to be great, but it's not. And that's not the reality. And that is an important part of this whole conversation, is that the teaching practice, the instructional practice that we're asking our teachers to do and what they are doing on a daily basis is unlike anything any of us as educators have ever done. And so I'm really sensitive to make sure that we solve this challenge or meet this challenge appropriately, because it's just not as easy as we thought it was going to be in my naivety. I won't say we, I'll speak for myself, that I thought it was going to be a lot easier than it is, but it's not. So that is just something to keep in mind as we talk about where we're going next.
Yeah, and just to that note, Jessica, that are on top of our teachers and our administrative team, our registrars and council secretaries were, there's some kudos for that too, because it was long nights and weekends, and I was so proud of just their commitment and their positive attitude to make it right by kids, and so appreciate you recognizing that. So this is, we're looking a little bit at some of our highlights and challenges within our current plan for a hybrid. It does align pretty closely with our comprehensive distance learning that we are doing now. It allows us to maintain the stable cohorts of less than 100 students, which is about 75 by the time when you split them in half. And continuing the teaming model, which I mentioned earlier, that we're just really committed to for that relationship building, not only with their peers, but again with their teachers. One of the challenges, well, one of the other challenges that we had that Melissa was speaking of too was just our electives. And in real life, students don't always get their first choice of electives, but sometimes we forget that. And so they're not getting necessarily their choice of electives now either, and that's been a real challenge, but just to stay within that cohort. We're looking at some options for lunches. It's a highlight because we think we have some options and some possibilities, but we still have some work that we need to do around that. And so we're hopeful, but we need some things that we need to address before we bring them back. Continuing to offer, what we're excited about is being able to continue to offer electives, not only just in the CDL, but in the hybrid model and what that looks like. And we're not offering as many electives, but we're still offering a rich amount of electives. So we're looking forward to that. One thing that's not on here that I want to note, because it is definitely a highlight, is continuing our social emotional learning during flight time, which is our advisory that we're doing, and we will continue to do that regardless of what model we are in. Some challenges that we have, we have some large classes, we have some small classes. There's just a real imbalance that we are going to need to continue to look at. In our CDL model, we have some ideas of how to do that, but when we get into hybrid, those are conversations that we're engaged in right now on how we can address the imbalance of those class sizes. And then, as Melissa was talking about before, just the instructional challenges of the three models. And so that's one that we also have. Some solutions that we are looking at, we're continuing to explore options to reduce the class sizes and to balance those out, not only in the core, but also in electives across the board. We're researching models for hybrid instruction and really looking at how to increase the rotation frequency of in-person instruction. For example, potential AA or BB or AB, working closely with Ken Bell on that. And opportunities there. And really the shift for hybrid would be synchronous while on-site, asynchronous while off-site. We want to really get the team, the fall design planning team, back on to the table and revisit some of the options that they had and proposals that they came up with. Not only just to, they had some really good thinking and some really good ideas, and I'm not sure, we've also held off on that because they need to get grounded with what they're doing with their classes. So that's time sensitive. And then lastly, on Friday during our PD, we had some digital instructional strategies training through Avid, which we believe is going to benefit both students and staff. And I think already this week there's been some cool opportunities taken on for students, different instructional strategies. So, turning it back over to you for discussion.
Let's do middle school discussion, then we'll have.
Okay. All right. Questions?
Jessica?
So the synchronous versus asynchronous instruction, is the idea here that if you're off campus in the hybrid or in the cloud campus, we don't try and have those kids online at the same time you're doing in-person instruction to try and avoid the 15 questions popping up in the Zoom chat window at the same time you're trying to answer questions of kids in class
And that's, yes, that's kind of what we're looking at with the asynchronous, just for the challenge that both Nancy and Melissa talked about. What does that look like to live stream in a classroom when I'm trying to teach live and engage the students that are off-site? And so we're just looking at different opportunities that we might have. Like an example might be even a flipped classroom where I'm asynchronous, what am I doing to then when I'm in the building, you know, I've already done that work and I'm ready for that lesson or that learning to take place. That answer your question?
yes, it does.
Are you, do you think you'll have to be able to find enough asynchronous resources to be able to meet that need with the kids who aren't online or aren't on site, I should say?
Yeah, yes, I do think that. Then sometimes even now, there's opportunities for some asynchronous planning for teachers and students if they have a substitute. It's really just prepping for when they're going to be on site. So it would really align and not be, the hope would be that it's not something separate. That asynchronous is completely separate from sync, that they are actually, you know, the off-site and on-site, that there's an alignment there that's prepping students, and it's not two separate things, because to me, that's a challenge. We're asking teachers to do even more than what they already are. They can do that. And that's the nice part about having the cloud campus students intermixed within, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a third entity.
Gang.
So for the offerings you guys have, are you gonna ask students which they would prefer, or would that be way too difficult to arrange?
We would just keep what we already have them within their cohorts, because we already have it broken into quarters, and so 1 and 3, you know, quarters 1 and 3, they have the same elective, and then 2 and 4, they would switch, and they already are, they're already aligned in there. So one thing that we are looking at, just to throw out there, one thing we are looking at is how can we, and we don't have the details of this, but how can we bring our mentor program back for our middle level students and our elementary students? And what might that look like? Our 8th grade leadership is piloting that opportunity right now with one of our elementary schools to see if there's a way. And what that would do is not only, I think, would it be good for all kids, but it would also then lower those electives, because you would pull, for example, and with that one, we would survey students, which we've done in the past, where we've been in the middle of the year and an elective comes to our attention. So we may do that, and that would change student schedules. But that's the only elective that we would.
Do you have just a ballpark idea of the number of students that would be in each of those groups when we did on campus, at home, and then in cloud? as they were working as one class?
It would be approximately anywhere between 68 to 75 within the cohort. Is that what you mean?
No, I mean like in a class period for a teacher, if they're trying to bounce between two different groups or whatever, I guess I'm trying to get an idea of kind of the number of students they would have in the classroom and online.
Okay, well, and if we take into consideration the cloud campus students, the on-site would roughly right now, it would sit at about 18 students in the classroom. Because you would not naturally pull out, if I have a class of 38, I would naturally pull out the cloud campus, and then that group would be split. So it could range from 16 to 18.
Thank you.
And that's why we need to address the class sizes so we can keep it within that number.
Is that the number that pretty much can fit in the classroom with the spacing requirements about
Yes.
16 to 18? So
Yes, that's,
you don't want to go much higher than that.
We don't.
You can't.
I think we could in
Yeah.
some of the classrooms, but not all of the classrooms would be able to do that. The building has classrooms that are much larger, but some of them that are smaller, so we would need to maybe look at just different locations or something, but we're working on that.
Other questions?
Just a comment, it must be challenging being in the new building and having to figure out cohorts, having, known the old building for so long, kudos on.
No public comment.
Yeah.
It's fine. I'm becoming very familiar with the buildings. No, it's great. I just take my radio with me, so I can radio the office if I get lost. Yeah, no, it's been. Thank you.
Okay. So, similar to what Mary Ann shared, some of the highlights, if we maintain our schedule as it is and move into a hybrid by splitting the school into half or third, maybe by alpha or some way like that, we would be able to maintain all of the same courses that we are currently offering. So we would be able to keep a comprehensive course offerings available to all students. We would have still in the quarter system and still something that we would keep because it is allowing the entry points that we were really thoughtful and adamant about at the beginning of the school year, making sure that students had multiple opportunities to move in and out of classes in as seamlessly a way as possible. We also are still offering students 8 credits, which is an increase from what has been in the trimester system, which is giving students, again, more opportunity and just a positive experience in terms of credits and making sure they're staying on track for graduation. And again, we would be able to keep our cohort within the 100 students because our class sizes are relatively small. That was something that we were able to maintain. And right now our class sizes are sitting between 28 and 20 and 30 is probably our biggest class right now. Which means if we split those 2 classes in half or in thirds, that would be 10 to 15 students that would come into the building in a hybrid model if we maintain it this way. Some of the challenges that we're still working through and trying to think about are lunches. If no matter how we split the school, it's still a lot of people. And so having up to 800 students in lunch, we don't have the staffing or the capacity to have classes do lunch in the classroom. So at the elementary level, that is the direction that they're going, and it makes sense and we're able to cover. But at the high school level, we just don't have enough people to cover lunches and have students sit in the classrooms. And so we're working on lunch. Lunch is a big one. It is sad and strange to think that it's a big thing, but it is. Like, that's a big constraint for us. Also, our cohorts aren't stable, so it's not that they're with a group of the same 100 students every day, because that would limit the courses. Again, because like I talked about earlier, there's so many pieces to the puzzle, we just can't figure out a way to keep the cohorts stable unless we limit the course offerings. And then the last challenge would be the things we talked about earlier, trying to figure out how to manage instruction in the best way possible. One of the things I wanted to share with you guys today is that through the last 6 weeks, I have been doing research like never before. I feel like I'm kind of back in grad school, trying to figure out what is a hybrid model, what is it looking like at the comprehensive high school level. So looking at a school that's comparable in our size with the offerings, and so doing research nationwide, exhausting my professional network within the state, trying to find people who are like us doing a hybrid model. And what it's settling into are three kind of options, three things. And so the first one is that it's the challenge we've been talking about. They're splitting the school in half and they're doing a live stream or some sort of, some people in class and some people doing asynchronous, so that's one option. Another option is that they have limited the course offerings. And so there are kind of, I'm using the word packages of classes, but it's basically you take math, science, social studies, language arts 1, and you take that chunk of classes, and or you take math 2, social studies 2, science 2, language arts 2, and it's a very limited package, and then so then the cohort is stable, and students are coming in on a variety of either the week on or week off, or the AA, break, BB that we talked about earlier this school year. And the third option that schools are kind of falling into is maintaining a comprehensive distance learning structure and providing students with in-person learning opportunities on a much more flexible basis. And so that's where our current thinking is right now, is thinking through this idea of what might it look like for us to have a comprehensive distance learning framework that serves as the basis for our hybrid model moving forward. And we bring students and groups of students in for in-person experiences on, again, these are all thinking, we're calling them lab days. So maybe twice a week, we have these 2 days that if a teacher needs to have students in the building for an experience, it could be a lab, a chemistry lab, it could be a Socratic seminar discussion in a language arts class, it could be rehearsal for a band ensemble, but they're just coming in for a specific experience and then going back to their comprehensive distance learning. There are a lot of logistical things about this that we haven't completely figured out, so I will put that out there right now, that there are a lot of things that we are thinking through, like how would transportation work and how would access to meals and all of those sorts of things. We're not there yet, but this is where our best thinking is right now, is that it allows us to maintain the priorities that we set forth from the beginning of the school year around students getting the opportunity to engage in all of the amazing courses that we currently offer. It gives us the opportunity to have students who need the support to be on campus, because we recognize that that is something that is happening, that our students are in just need, they're in need of support, and that the support needs to be in person. And I think we all experience this just being in this room together. It's a different feel being here together than it is being in a virtual setting. And so we are trying to really think about this differently, knowing that we could be in this for a while, and this could be something that is a longer term experience for us. And so we are open to any suggestions, any thoughts, any questions and comments that people have. We are working with our vision team, so we have about 20 teachers that are still working through this with us. We're working with our counseling staff, and like I said, I'm daily in contact with as many other high school principals around us and trying to see what they're doing and getting ideas. We meet as a league, so we're meeting with everyone in our Pacific League every other week to talk about what schools in Hillsborough and McMinnville and all their plans are. And so we're really trying to collaborate on this to get to the best possible solution for all kids. But it's hard. This is a hard one, guys. We're doing the best we can to get to it, but this is a challenge. And that's what I have for you today.
Questions?
So when for this lab days, for the in-person experiences, does that always involve lunch? Is there options where it would be a morning experience and then they would leave and they wouldn't necessarily need lunch?
Yes.
Or just an afternoon without a lunch? So that's an option possibly too. Okay.
And that's something that we're working with our transportation department on to see how many bus runs we could do in a given day, and then with the other levels, trying to match the schedule around with that. But that's something that we've definitely taken into
Because
consideration.
that could be four runs.
Yeah.
You know, start morning, end morning, start afternoon, end afternoon. But yeah, okay.
Justin.
So something that, when we talked about this, I think that, Eric and I talked about that we shared was we know that there are kids that are homeless in our district and who rely on the high school being open, rely on the ability to be in the building, especially as winter comes, to be warm, to get meals, to wash their clothes, to have internet. And I really like this idea and would hope that one of the things that we could add under this is the ability to identify kids in difficult circumstances and find a way for them to be able to be on campus all day, to enable them to be there and have supports, and find a way to feed them on campus. And I think with the right structure, that may be possible and would meet a need that is frankly currently going unmet. So I would encourage that. I like this idea of let's get kids on campus and together when they need to be, how they need to be. And maybe that isn't every week. And the beauty of high school is that you can be a little less structured because they should be able to kind of watch themselves. That's the hope.
Other
And
questions?
so kind of, I think a little bit related. I mean, in spring, we were able to have a meals program where people could come in and pick them up. Or I think we were talking about possibly delivering them to it. Is that in operation right now? How is that going?
Yeah.
Is it at all three levels, elementary, middle, high, and?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
And the transportation, some of it's taped to them and some of it's
Meal hubs.
meal hubs still. Okay, sounds good.
Other questions? Yeah, Eric.
Not to add one more thing to the complexity, but I was actually wondering about, we offer a lot of dual credit classes. Has our community college partners been helpful in kind of making adjustments or that we need to so we can continue doing this?
It's been very helpful, yes. So we are offering dual credit in all of the courses that we offered dual credit in the past. It's a challenge for students, and just because it is a lot more work in a shorter amount of time. And so I think about our students who are taking Writing 121 right now.
Right.
Mr. Colbert has been working diligently with PCC, and they've been very accommodating. However, they can't obviously change the structure or the expectations of the course. And so students are working very hard to earn the dual credit and doing it in a much shorter amount of time. But Mr. I met with him today, he's reporting that students are doing wonderfully, that they're really engaging in it and it's going really well. But yes, they have been fairly accommodating in terms of allowing us to move to the quarter system and still offer dual credit. But challenging because they can't change the expectation for the course.
Yes. And kind of along the same lines, have we heard anything about AP testing for this
AP
year?
testing,
Is that going to be adjusted?
It's going to be similar to what it was in the spring, minus the fact in the spring, the college boards tested stopping coverage of material in March, just before the shutdown. So they said if you haven't learned it after March 15th, let's say, then that won't be on the test. And this year that is not the case. So that it will be a full year, full expectation of knowledge for our AP courses. One of the shifts we made with our AP courses, if you remember, is that we did pull them out into 4 quarters. And so students are getting more credit for the AP course, but they're getting the same amount of time. And so we don't anticipate that will have a negative impact on students just because they are getting the same amount of time. And last year we actually had some of our highest AP scores that we've seen in a while. I will bring that information for you. I'll make sure that you guys can see that. Because the students did very well. They did very well across the board on their AP test.
So if you take those scores and then you look at the articulation tables going into the colleges, even though it was the tests were for a shortened period, did they still get full credit when they?
Yeah.
Wow, okay, good.
So that we are seeing a lot of shift in post-secondary right now, just across the board, as we should, right? Like, we're in the middle of a pandemic and we should see some shifts there. And that's one of them. And so there are a lot of schools, particularly in the Oregon University system and the California University system, that are just changing. They're just saying, this is now the right thing to do and we're going to adjust given what students are experiencing.
I had complete confidence in our secondary system. It was
It's the
the
post-secondary
university system that doesn't exactly have the best track record. Thank you.
Yes.
Jessica?
Yeah, I want to acknowledge that what Sherwood is doing and offering 5 days a week, full classes, all 5 days is pretty phenomenal. I have a niece and nephew that attend a district near here that are getting 4 days a week instruction, only 2 hours a day. They're on a quarter system. AP students will get 2 quarters of instruction and be expected to take a test. So they could be done with the test, done with their class in December and take a test in May, but they haven't studied for months. What the teachers are doing, what the administration is doing here and providing a true education, full day, every day for students is phenomenal. And it's heroic, because it's incredibly hard, but it's a real comprehensive education that will have our students. I don't think when you look at the AP tests at the end of this year, what people in a district like Sherwood look like is going to be way different than in districts even not very far from here. So it's amazing what you all are doing. And I wanted my colleagues to hear that this is not what everyone is getting. We're getting it here because of the amazing team that we have here.
And I echo your commendation, and it's like I started with, the teachers that are working in our buildings right now are heroes. Heroic is the right word. They are doing a Herculean feat, and they're doing it so very well. And they are their hardest critics, right? Like we all are. They're their hardest critics, but what they're doing is nothing short of a miracle. Honestly, it's amazing.
Sue?
Couple things, a lot of things come to mind, listening to it again, amazing work. I guess what strikes me, I'm super impressed with the work that's been done and continues to be done. I'm glad that Ainsley, you and the other students are so resilient, because I think you're gonna have to be this year. And just as someone that's been here and watched this, I know we're all very solutions oriented and we're trying to find a solution. And as I sit here, I worry that the solution doesn't exist for every student or every teacher or every staff member or classified associate. And I think that's the real struggle that we all see. I applaud our efforts, all of you, to continue to find that solution and do the very best job we can. But I think it's also okay to realize that there isn't a magic solution to this. Unfortunately, I know we all want that. I certainly want that. I want to see kids in these buildings so desperately, especially, these wonderful new buildings. But again, I just applaud you trying to find those solutions, as hard as they are, and continuing to do this incredible work. I know it's paying off. So thank you for all of that.
All right, thank you.
Ainsley, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I think, as the student, do you have any comments on what you've heard and how things are going this year so far? I know you talked a little bit earlier, but.
Right. As you were talking about earlier, writing 121 is very, very, very difficult. A few of my friends have actually dropped it because it's just way too much for them. Granted, most of the writing 121 students also take other more difficult classes. And so having that is a pretty big plate, and a lot of the people who did end up dropping it work, and so they go to school for this many hours, and then they're expected to study for this many, but then they have to work, and their work closes at this time, and so it's a real struggle finding a good balance, because not only do we have those responsibilities, but I know personally and with my grade, it's our senior year, and that's just not really how we want to spend it, is just doing school all the time. Which the teachers are really understanding, and I really appreciate all of them, because literally I emailed my teachers and I was like, something happened yesterday and I won't be able to make this class. And they sent me a recording, like on the spot, of what I was being taught that day that I was gonna miss. And it was just so amazing, and they're so empathetic, and you guys are all amazing. And I know that some students don't see what's going on in the background. And I know a lot of my friends are like, well, why don't they just do this? And I'm like, okay, well, so let me tell you everything that's wrong with that. Like, it's not as simple as let's just go to school and then it'll be fine. Like, that's not how that works. And so they don't see it as much of an issue as you guys do, because you have to, because it's kind of your responsibility. But yeah, no, it's going pretty good. It's difficult in some classes and it's easier in some. I know that a lot of people are not loving it, but why would you love this at all? So yeah, I think that the school district is doing pretty darn well. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Melissa and Marianne, you're certainly welcome to kill the rest of your evening with us, but if you rather.
It's good to see you.
That's a good decision in that process. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, next up, all students belong. Christine. Since she's done manipulating screens and.
One second. Doing a lot of things right now. Sorry, this is really multitasking kitchen.
Multitasking, yeah.
Okay. Good evening, Chair Allen, Superintendent Coordinating Board of Directors. Tonight, I am pleased to be here to share information with you about the All Students Belong rule that was recently adopted by the State Board of Education, and related guidance that was recently shared with our district and all districts in Oregon from ODE. I'm going to discuss the background of this rule, its impact for Oregon school districts, as well as the next steps we're going to be taking here in the Sherwood School District. I actually was really fortunate to have an opportunity to attend kind of the first meeting where this was rolled out. And it was just really exciting to be a part of that meeting and to hear kind of the background of this. And so I was really excited to be able to come and share that with you today. So, so the catalyst for the All Students Belong rule occurred in July of this year when Governor Kate Brown received a letter from an Oregon high school student. And the student, was writing her asking for the governor's help, specifically in this letter to ban the Confederate flag in Oregon schools. In the student's own words, banning the Confederate flag is far more than just an act to please some people. It shows students and educators that the state of Oregon sees them in their struggles to be considered equal and aiding in the fight against racism. Right now is a great time for Oregon to be a leader for its own citizens and throughout the United States and install this overdue policy. And this student was one of just many that had written to governor and other state leaders voicing the impact that racism, hate symbols, violence, and all forms of discrimination have had on their safety and well-being and their ability to access their education. So in her response to this issue, Governor Brown on August 18th of this year wrote to Colt Gill, who is the director of the Oregon Department of Education, and to the members of the State Board of Education. And she instructed that a rule be enacted to protect the health and safety of all Oregon students impacted by discrimination and hate symbols. ODE and the State Board responded very quickly, and exactly 1 month later on September 18th, they enacted a temporary All Students Belong rule. So at the heart of this rule is the belief that when one person in a school community is treated poorly, everyone is affected. The present presence of hate symbols on the basis of race, color, religion, gender identity, sexual orientation, disability, or national origin, they cause harm and significantly disrupt the operation of our schools. The All Students Belong rule acknowledges the responsibility of school districts to provide safe and inclusive schools for our students, where they can learn and where staff can work and where families and community can participate and all of these stakeholders can be free from harm to their health and safety. This includes the rights of our students to receive high-quality experiences, free from discrimination and harassment, as well as the right of those students to access the education in an environment that is safe from hatred, racism, or violence. In addition, this rule addresses the needs of the entire school community, recognizing that staff members also have the right to work in safe and non-discriminatory environments, and that our family and community members should feel safe when they engage in our schools or visit our buildings. By recognizing the impact that hate, bias, and violence have on all members of the school community, the All Students Belong rule is an important step in creating safe and inclusive school climates where all members of the community feel welcome and, most importantly, where our students are protected. So what exactly is included in the All Students Belong rule? So the rule includes two main components. The first is that it prohibits three of the most recognizable symbols of hate, the nukes, the swastika, and Confederate flag, in any program or school-sponsored activity. The only exception to this would be if those items are included in an approved curriculum that is aligned to the Oregon State standards. This ban applies to both in-person and distance learning environments, which obviously is so relevant to us right now in our current situation. Symbols such as these create substantial disruption to school activities and the learning environment by creating an atmosphere of fear and intimidation, and by causing physiological and psychological stress and trauma to students and other members of the school community. The second component of this rule is that it requires school districts to adopt board policy and implement administrative procedures to address bias incidents. The deadline for this policy implementation is January 1st of 2021. This includes procedures for addressing incidents involving the previously noted hate symbols. In the guidance released by ODE on September 18th, they noted that while swift disciplinary actions, zero tolerance policies, and other punitive responses that are common in school districts, in favor of immediate resolution, they ignore the complexity of bias incidents. And these approaches do little to alter the attitudes and biases that result in negative and often violent behavior, and they provide little chance for growth, healing, or understanding. Instead, within this rule, schools are encouraged to implement trauma-informed, healing-centered, and educational approaches, which are necessary to address the root causes and consequences of these acts. And this will also create opportunities for education and learning while avoiding blame, punishment, or further exacerbating those attitudes which created the incidents in the first place. So just quickly to review some next steps. In the coming months, we're going to receive more guidance from the Oregon Department of Education, and they're going to work closely with us and other school districts to help us implement this rule. So we actually are grateful because we have a lot of support and resources that are coming our way. This is great. It's not just a, hey, go do this. It's, we need you to do this, and here's everything you need to make it happen. Earlier this week, we also received some sample policy language from OSBA. We just received that, and obviously we want to thoughtfully review that with our team, explore if we need to have legal counsel take a look at it. And so we've chosen that we're going to bring that policy to you to the November board meeting. That gives our team time to do that thoughtful review and really make sure that we're getting our language right in whatever policy language we bring you. That will be for first read and review, and with subsequent, hopefully, adoption in our December meeting. And with this timeline, we will easily meet our January 1st deadline. Additionally, we're going to continue to receive guidance from ODE ongoing past the point of that policy adoption. As I mentioned earlier, this was a temporary rule. We do expect a permanent rule to be adopted in February or March of 2021. And so at that point, we'll be receiving resources specific to professional development and the tools we need to enforce the policies that we've adopted and really help our staff stand strong in backing up those policies. And just again, allowing for consistent and effective implementation, which is what we always want with policies such as this. Here in the Sherwood School District, our commitment to equity has been an ongoing area of work. And with the adoption of hopefully both the anti-racism resolution this evening, as well as the policy we'll be bringing you in the coming months, your role as the board of directors in that work continues. The All Students Belong role not only aligns with our ongoing work, but it also aligns with the values and goals of our district, and the guidance of ODE in implementing this role provide us with all of those resources we need to continue the work, not only of this role, but everything we've been working for in the last few years. And the most important part of all of this is it's going to give us what we need to provide safe and accessible learning to all students, staff, and families of our district. And at this point, I will take any questions or discussion you may have.
Questions? Yeah, Ainsley.
So with the banning of the Confederate flag,
Yes.
does that include students who have it on their cars? Like, is that allowed?
I don't know to that level of detail. I would imagine
Okay.
if they're bringing that car on campus, it might, but I don't know to that level of detail yet
Right.
because I haven't seen the policy language to that specifically.
Okay, and if they're wearing it as like a cape in the building?
If they're wearing it, absolutely. And we actually have existing language in our student handbook already banning these symbols. So
Okay.
really this policy is just backing up what we already do. This is actually a practice that's been existing in our district already. So it's been part of the dress code, it's been part of the student handbook. There's also language in our student handbook about harassment based on protected class, which includes race. So really, this isn't anything different from what our practice has been. What it does is it gives us the strength of policy to back it up, and it gives us a clear path for how we address those incidents when they occur.
Other questions or comments? Yeah, Justin.
What our current policy address insignia of beyond the ones indicated here of hate groups, including, for example, the Proud Boys that tend to be pretty active in the Northwest?
Our current handbook language says racially divisive symbols. I know that the three listed in the All Students Belong rule, my understanding from the state level is those have been kind of legally tested already. Guidance from OSBA and from ODE is if we decide to go into more detail and add additional items to our policy, we absolutely need to have legal counsel guide us through that process to make sure that we are also attending to free speech and all of those elements. And as we explore the language we're preparing to bring to you, we'll be considering those types of things. So, you know, kind of when we meet in November, we'll present in more detail the language of that policy to you as we bring it for first read. And so we'll be able to kind of have those discussions at that point if we need to go further.
Thank you.
And the challenge we faced when we added the language around the Confederate flag to our handbook, we actually needed to have a disruption around the flag before we could ban the flag on campus. It couldn't be a potential disruption. There had to be a disruption, and then we could put something in place on the guidance of council, and even that was a little bit.
Okay.
So I don't believe current policy would ban a Proud Boys shirt or a Build a Wall shirt or something along those lines which we've seen. Until it comes to disruption, then it'd be a different conversation.
Thank you.
But exactly along the lines of what she said, but and that's why they're suggesting we get council advice before doing anything, I think.
Other questions or comments? All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Christine.
Next up is budget vacancies. Mr. Rose.
Good evening, Chair Allen, Superintendent Corey, members of the board. I'm here with my annual request to open vacancies on our budget committee. We have two from terms that are expiring, one for Cole Petrowski and second is Ryan Dunlap's positions 1 and 4 respectively. Those positions expired June 30th of this year. The new positions will be in effect until June 30th of 2023. And we'd ask that applications be submitted by November 13th with a plan to have you as a group select the two new members on December 9th. I can take any questions related to that. Otherwise, you can see the application is part of the board packet and available for the public.
Thank you. All right, next up, we have 3 action items on second read. First is the previously discussed resolution of the board of the school district condemning racism and committing to being an anti-racist school district. Are there questions about that resolution, or is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that we adopt the anti-racism resolution as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? The resolution is adopted. Next up, policy updates, second read. Mr. Howard.
Good evening, Board. Board Chair Allen, Board of Directors, and Superintendent Free. Before I launch into this very brief update that I'm bringing tonight, I just want to make sure that we call out, we have not publicly thanked Nancy Stocker and Christina Feigen and their teams for the work they've done this year. But I have to say, working alongside of them on a weekly basis, their jobs have not been easy this year, and they have just masterfully engaged people in conversations. They've kept a level head through all of it. They partnered really well with the district, and I just cannot say enough about how much we appreciate that. And so, Nancy, thank you so much. You're quick to thank other people, and I think oftentimes we miss that. So last month we brought revised policies from sections G and J for first read, and tonight we bring those policies for second read and our hope to adopt the revised policies in those sections. Great.
Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the policy updates as presented.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks.
Last up is high school language arts curriculum adoption. Mr. Bennett.
Thank you, Chair Allen. Last month, we brought to you a few books for Accelerated English 10, which finishes up really our K-10 English adoption process, and we asked for approval of these final 4 novels tonight.
Mr. Chair, move that we accept the novels presented for Accelerated English 10.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. We'll have to decide it.
Yeah.
We're good.
And one more.
That concludes the items on our agenda. Are there any closing comments or thoughts or anything anyone wants to share? If not, our next meeting will be November 18th. We are adjourned.